Section 0.4, Energy and the Economy, Continental Perspectives. The last part, Part 4, of the Handbook features 6 chapters dedicated to major intercontinental differences and perspectives in the energy landscape, which profoundly influence the shape of energy transitions, justifying the necessity to speak of transitions in the plural rather than hypothesizing a uniform transition pattern applicable to the entire world. There are striking differences in the availability of primary sources, with some regions, countries especially rich in coal or hydrocarbon resources, while others have favorable conditions for a major expansion of hydroelectricity or meteorological characteristics especially propitious for wind or solar energy. These differences cannot be ignored and determine vested interests in the existing global energy structures, on the one hand, as well as encouraging exploitation of innovative solutions, on the other. History, of course, plays a huge role. Energy structures have huge inertia and past decisions influence outcomes for very extended periods of time. Some forms of energy, like hydroelectricity or nuclear, have secular histories or have been profoundly influenced by political and military considerations. The gap in income levels dividing continents has been narrowing since the end of the Second World War but remains very wide. The consumption of energy per capita in the Indian subcontinent or in sub-Saharan Africa remains at an order of magnitude smaller than in the advanced industrial countries. We have mentioned the importance of achieving universal energy access, but access per se is not sufficient. No bridging the huge remaining income gaps is possible if distances in energy availability per capita are not reduced. Priorities for countries where the population is energy poor cannot be the same as for countries that are major consumers and emitters of greenhouse gases and have been for centuries. We have not pretended to offer an exhaustive geography of energy, opting rather for selecting a limited number of key cases. We begin with China, Chapter 31, for the simple reason that China is today the largest source of greenhouse gases and the country whose energy production and demand grow more rapidly in absolute terms. Despite large domestic resources of coal, oil and gas, the country has emerged as a key importer of oil and natural gas, exposing it to vulnerabilities associated with import dependence. Over the course of China's economic expansion, its energy policy has been geared towards ensuring adequate supplies at affordable prices to end users, preferring to use administrative measures to regulate supply and demand rather than market mechanisms. Yet as the country's economic structure shifts away from heavy industry and towards consumer services, its energy needs and choices are changing, while the role of markets is expanding. And the negative environmental impact of China's energy choices has now become a social concern, as well as an industrial opportunity. Russia, Chapter 32, deserves attention not only because it is the most important exporter of gas as well as one of the 3 most important producers of oil, with the United States and Saudi Arabia. Russia, ranking 4th in the world in the primary energy consumption and in the carbon dioxide emissions, adheres to the strategy of business as usual and relies on fossil fuels. Decarbonization of the energy sector is not yet on the agenda. A skeptical attitude to the problem of global climate change prevails among stakeholders. GDP energy intensity remains high, supported by relatively low energy prices and high cost of capital. The share of solar and wind energy in the energy balance is insignificant and is not expected to exceed 1% by 2040. The challenge for Russia in the coming years is to develop a new strategy for the development of its energy sector, which enters the zone of high turbulence, even in the absence of the influence of the climate change agenda. Due to the COVID-19, increasing global competition, growing technological isolation, financial constraints and, since February 2022, ostracism following the invasion of Ukraine. The Middle East and North Africa, Chapter 3.3, is the region richest in hydrocarbon resources, but these are very unevenly distributed between countries. The region therefore displays great diversity in opportunities and perspectives. However, most countries remain exceptionally reliant on fossil fuels with a highly limited role played by clean energy alternatives, while the region also lags behind other regions' progress in energy efficiency. In the Arab least developed countries, LDCs, energy access remains incomplete, severely obstructing socio-economic progress. Sub-Saharan Africa, Chapter 34, embodies a paradox. Although the region is blessed with energy resources and has long attracted the oil and gas industry, the majority of its population lacks access to energy, especially electricity, which hinders their economic and social development. For decades the dominant discourse, from governments as well as international development agencies and economic actors, has considered that the exploitation of its energy resources would prompt the economic growth of the continent by giving the countries the financial means to undertake development strategies. Unfortunately, the reality seems much bleaker as most energy-producing countries in sub-Saharan Africa seem to underperform in terms of economic development, plagued by the so-called resource curse. Nigeria, the main oil-producing country on the continent, offers a dramatic illustration of this situation. However, a new approach has recently emerged which focuses on the development of access to energy for the population. As a consequence, all over the continent new initiatives have been put in place to boost the access to energy for the local population. This access has at last been acknowledged as a key driver for economic development. The last two chapters are devoted, respectively, to North America, Chapter 35, and Europe, Chapter 36. North America is characterized by levels of energy consumption per capita which are double those in Europe or Japan. Thus, issues of energy efficiency are extremely important. High energy consumption rates in United States and Canada challenge reaching climate policy goals, under heightened public pressure, and the search for alternatives to fossil fuels. Mexico will be more focused on economic development and energy access. The United States will continue to emphasize energy innovation, driven by public investment in research and development and private capital in commercial applications. Finally, Europe has tended to occupy the moral high ground of decarbonization and energy transition, not without contradictions and with outcomes not exactly in line with expectations. Popular opinion plays a major role, and in contradictory directions, with simultaneous rise in green and populist political support, which results in hesitations and divergent priorities in individual countries. Progressively, a consensus on many important aspects has been emerging at least within the European Union, although divergences remain very strong on crucial items in the agenda, such as the future role of nuclear energy, carbon capture and sequestration in natural gas. The EU set an energy policy framework based on three pillars: security of supply, competitiveness and sustainability, with the goal to address three different priorities: competitiveness, affordable prices; security, of energy supply; and sustainability, clean energy. These three pillars appear to pursue contradictory goals, especially in the short term, but they are seen as converging in the longer term. This chapter aims to analyze how these different objectives have been key drivers of the European energy policy and economics. To illustrate this, the authors also present 5 case studies: the United Kingdom, Italy, France, Germany and Poland. Lastly, the chapter presents the European Green Deal, whose ultimate goal is to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. The chapter analyzes how a climate neutrality goal requires a substantial transformation of the EU economy, which comes with some internal and external frictions. In conclusion, this book is the result of the collaboration of numerous authors from different institutions and with different backgrounds and perspectives. We have made no attempt to eliminate differences in opinions and conclusions because the future of energy is open to multiple solutions and the reader should be exposed to all points of view. As stated at the beginning of this introduction, we have multiple alternative technological solutions that may deliver abundant and affordable energy for the future. The exact mix that will prevail is likely to be country and region specific because of structural differences as well as of different priorities and policies. In any case, the basis for rational decision-making is adequate knowledge and understanding of technical and economic opportunities and constraints. Energy is one of several areas in which a sometimes difficult relationship exists between experts, politicians and the wider public. This handbook is the fruit of a lifelong hands-on experience by the editors working for the energy industry, international organizations, governments as well as in academia. We hope that this handbook will give a modest contribution to improve access to relevant information for energy professionals, for politicians, for scholars and students as well as for a wider public and thus facilitate the adoption of sounder energy policies. Manfred Hafner, Giacomo Lucchini.